going live. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for March 21st, 2022. We'll note just a couple absences. Councilmember Mosley is out of state dealing with loss of a family member. Councilmember Ken Saunders is still out long-term with an illness, and Councilmember Williams notified me today that she was not feeling well and would not be here. So with that, we'll move on to invocation and Pledge of Allegiance, and that'll be City Attorney Krebs.
Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this night that we can all be here safely and in freedom, and we just thank you for the privilege of working to conduct the city's business. Thank you for the rain. We thank you for all those keeping us safe, our first responders, and we thank you for the city employees that just provide all the services that make our lives so much better, Lord. We pray that you will go with us tonight, that we would make good decisions, that we would always conduct ourselves in a way that honors you, Lord. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have on the agenda special guests and announcements, the Mayor's Employee of the Month. We're going to go ahead and pass on that this time, which brings us to approval of the minutes. Y'all received a copy of the March 7th regular meeting minutes in your council packet. If there's no discussion on that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second to adopt the minutes from March 7th City Council meeting. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That brings us to public comment. I don't have any public comment cards at this time, so we will move on to financial statement review. Ms. Mathis, you are up.
Oh, it's going to make me log back in. If I can type it right. Okay. There we go. My apologies. Should be up on the screen in a moment. Nope. There it is. Alrighty. We are taking a look at the February 2022 monthly financial reports. Starting off looking at revenues, our millage tax is $72,000 ahead of budget year to date and $72,000 ahead of the prior year. This was some excess millage tax we received in February. Franchise fees, they're $1,000 behind budget year to date, $33,000 more than the prior year. State turnback funds are $5,000 behind budget year to date and $3,000 more than the previous year. County sales tax is $120,000 ahead of budget year to date and $88,000 more than the previous year. Our city sales tax is $58,000 ahead of budget year to date and $7,000 less than the previous year. I kind of looked into why is our city tax not up the same amount, kind of percentage-wise, as our county tax, and it has to do with some local cap rebates that were issued in February, and I'm actually now getting some of that data from the state, so I can actually see some of that. When we have those variances, I can go log in and look and see what kind of rebates were issued. In the police department, their current year to date is $61,000 behind budget year to date, $11,000 more than the previous year. That's timing with the quarterly 911 payments and their lot fee turnback funds is causing that behind budget year to date. We'll get the first quarterly PSAP payment in March. We actually got it today. So, fire department current year to date is $9,000 behind budget year to date and $10,000 more than the prior year. That's all related to the timing of those lot fee funds. Parks and Recreation, current year to date, $12,000 behind budget year to date, $31,000 ahead of the previous year. And the Senior Wellness Center is $68,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $32,000 more than the previous year. All of the other department revenues are ahead or near budget year-to-date and are ahead of the prior year. Overall revenues for the year are $253,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $291,000 more than the previous year. On our expenditures in most departments remain below budget year-to-date other than City Council and citywide service, and both of those are related to the timing of various annual renewals, or in City Council we've got some conference registrations for an upcoming conference that are kind of an annual expense that are hitting right at the beginning of the year. Overall expenses, are expected to be a little higher in some of these areas. Overall expenses throughout this year are expected to be higher than prior years related to planned budgeted increases. You're especially going to start seeing that in the next couple months with the compensation increases that we approved in the budget. They're going to look, the year over year is really going to look higher. So our budget is our better guide of how we're doing this year on the expenditure side. As of the end of February, the fund balance is $771,000 over the required minimum reserve, and the current year revenues are currently $430,000 less than the expenses. I did want to point out one thing. When I first arrived here in June of 2020, there was some numbers that used to be on these financial reports that weren't really adding up the right way, and so I had kind of just taken them off the reports for a little while, and they're back on your reports for now. And you look at this screen that I've got up right now, below the kind of expenses on the P&Ls for all of the funds, you now see the fund balance, and this one, it's actually got a kind of a relation to that required minimum reserve as well, where we're budgeted to be, where an amended budget has us, and then where we currently are year to date, how that is going to affect our fund balance. And I'm very, very happy to say that all of those numbers tie together now. So I felt confident putting that back on there when they didn't add up, because our fund balance from all the prior years wasn't kind of tying through the right way. Looking at our street fund, current year-to-date revenues are $20,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $20,000 more than the prior year. That was the same excess millage tax we received in the general fund, we received in the street fund as well. State turnback funds are $35,000 under budget year-to-date, $13,000 more than the prior year. Street aid program is year-to-date is $5,000 ahead of budget and $7,000 more than the previous year. Both the streets and senior services transportation are under budget year-to-date on the expense side, and the current available street fund balance at the end of February was right at $5.3 million. In the sanitation fund, the sanitation fees current year-to-date is pretty much at budget and $1,000 more than the previous year. Their operating expenses are $12,000 under budget and $36,000 more than the prior year. Personnel expenses are $62,000 under budget and $8,000 more than the prior year. That sanitation fund balance at the end of February is right at $2.1 million. Not a whole lot of changes in the other funds. The police and fire fund is happening monthly. So far, those revenues are $50,000 ahead of budget year to date, 21 more than the previous year. And that is all I have. Oh, no, it's not. I have some department updates. I forgot. The annual comprehensive financial report and audit for 2019. I'm working on the big book report here. So hopefully in the next couple weeks we'll have that wrapped up. Again, bank account reconciliations are now being completed monthly. So these financial reports are actually reconciled, and the books were closed for February before these were prepared. And we have published requests for qualifications for the city's audit services and our actuarial services. Those RFQs are open right now, awaiting responses in April, so that we can select a new audit firm for 2020, 2021, 2022's audits with an option to extend. And then the actuarial valuation has to do with the state required pension for the mayor and the city clerk treasurer's positions. those actuarial valuations have to be done every 2 years, and we're due for 2020 as well as 2022. And so 2020s will have to be completed before I can complete the 2020 annual comprehensive financial report. So trying to wrap all that up.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from the council? Councilmember Holt?
Give you a little bit of a chance to do a teaching session. Going down the budget, and just as I saw it, just as it has nothing to do with the department, the police department is showing below budget, I think $61,000, I believe, right, in parentheses. Then it comes to, of course, the actual for last year, and then the last category, it's over or under, so it was $11,000 over or more than last year.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
That means that this year's expenses are currently, as of right this minute, $11,000, or at the end of February, we're $11,000 more than they were at the end of February last year.
But is that, it's more, but is that more under budget or is it more over budget? I'm just,
Okay,
my
so
head's swirling, so I'm sorry.
the first column is looking at a comparison to budget year to
Right.
date.
Okay.
The second one is just comparing one year's actual numbers with another year's actual numbers,
Okay.
regardless of what's budgeted.
Right.
And that's why I said, we're going to see the rest of this year, the department budgets are going to be higher than the previous year because we budgeted for, the compensation increases and other various increases throughout that budget. So,
Okay, it was just to help me understand what that means.
yeah, the first one is a comparison to a budget year to date. So in this case, it's an annual budget that's divided by 12, so 2 months of the annual budget compared to the February actuals.
Okay.
And then the other column is just looking at January, February of last year compared to January, February this year.
Super, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financial statement.
So move.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is the procedural motion. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to unfinished business. The first item of business is the third reading of ordinance 1036, establishing rights-of-way. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1036, an ordinance to establish standards and specifications to administer and regulate the right-of-way in public interest and to provide for the issuance and regulation of right-of-way permits.
Thank you. Y'all may recall that this was tabled at the last meeting, and so I'll go ahead and let the city attorney explain.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just on page 7, the amendment that we discussed at the last meeting and this is pretty in line with the city of Bryant and the language that they have in their code. It just allows for us to reimburse relocation costs if the utility already had the right-of-way prior to the right-of-way being or already occupied, I guess, what became the right-of-way prior to any unit of local government having the right-of-way, and if, in particular, if they had established some type of adverse possession over that before it became dedicated, or if they had, paid for the right-of-way and obtained that right prior to it being dedicated. Any questions y'all want to ask me on that?
And then procedurally, I believe what we would need is a motion to amend ordinance 1036 to be as submitted in the council packet. Is that right?
Correct. We would, and so if we do vote to amend it to include that, it would go back to first reading because it is a material change.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second to amend ordinance 1036 to be as stated in the council packet. Is there any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. In that case, I think I'm going to go ahead and ask the city clerk to read ordinance 1036 as amended for the first time.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1036, an ordinance to establish standards and specifications to administer and regulate the right-of-way and public interest, and to provide for the issuance of the regulation of the right-of-way permits.
Thank you. This will be on second reading at the next council meeting if there's no discussion presently. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item is the third reading of ordinance 1052, amending city code regarding grading. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1052, an ordinance amending Chapter 94 of the Maumelle City Code to provide for a grading permit, providing for an emergency clause, and for other purposes.
All right, this is another one that I'm going to have the city attorney explain what you're looking at.
So the comment, Mr. Mosley's comments last month, or last meeting, caused me to look carefully at how things were arranged in the ordinance with all of the different changes that have happened to it over time. It's kind of morphed. And so there are a number of things that were classified under, like when a grading permit that is required, that really didn't have anything to do with when it's actually required. They were more requirements of the permit itself and replanting requirements and those types of things. So what you see is really not any substantive change, but a very big rearranging of items to try to put everything into its proper category so that it would be readable and usable, as you know, people have to try to figure out how to use it going forward if they can see exactly when they are going to need the permit and what the requirements of the permit will be.
Thank you. And so procedurally with this, do we also need a motion to amend ordinance 1052 to be as submitted in the council packet?
Yes, that would be true.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion second to amend ordinance 1052 to be as presented in the council packet. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries, and ordinance 1052 is amended. Just to clarify, I believe you said this, these aren't substantive changes. What does this do with the readings?
Correct. I did not change any substance of the requirements that were there or when a permit was required or anything like that. It is just rearranging text from one location to another for the most part. So in my opinion, my interpretation, I don't think there are any material changes to the ordinance. But if anyone disagrees, I certainly think that's something that the council could discuss and reach a different conclusion if they so chose.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1052.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1052. Is there any additional discussion on that? Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 1052 is adopted. With that, we'll move on to new business. The first item of new business is a presentation on the Club Manor corridor. Mr. Roberts, if you could come on down. Y'all may recall that we conducted a Club Manor corridor study this last year, and Mr. Roberts is here to update the council on that study.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Dave Roberts with Craft & Toll. I live at 155 Marseille Drive here in Maumelle, and excited to do this presentation. We've been working at this study now for quite a few months. We have a steering committee that has been giving us guidance, including some of your staff members, as well as some residents that live on Club Manor. And I want to pull you back out to the 4 counties just to give you a sort of quick background as to why we're even doing this. This graphic here shows you the Greenway Master Plan that Craft & Toll is currently working on with Metro Plan. So you're seeing all 4 counties and 5 different spokes that will all originate from the Arkansas River between Little Rock and North Little Rock. And so you can see one spoke goes down to Hot Springs, another one goes out to Lone Oak, one goes from North Little Rock all the way up to Cabot and Ward, and then the 4th one is internal in Little Rock going east-west, and the very last one is the one that affects us here in Maumelle because it continues from Burns Park all the way up to Conway. And so this is based on walkability and bikeability to really attract economic development to Central Arkansas, as well as provide recreation and health to all the communities. Metro Plan, if you remember, has dedicated $55 million of their funding over the next 10 years to help build these greenways. And when I say greenway, think about the Razorback Greenway, Northwest Arkansas. They're all over the country. We're talking about like a 12 to 14 foot wide path for pedestrians and cyclists. So that is why we're looking at, particularly as it comes through Maumelle, because it will, and we want that placement of that greenway to be strategic for economic benefits for the community. So you can see that's just a blow up of the section that goes all the way to Conway. So if we look at Google Earth image of Maumelle, what has been recommended, and the reason we're looking at Club Manor, is that instead of having this greenway only follow the boulevard, which parts of it does now, which will need to be widened to accommodate the new guidelines, but part of it comes up to right near Kroger, and there's sections of it missing along the boulevard until you get all the way up to Millwood. It makes more sense to get it behind the commercial area so that this greenway can connect both the Willestein Park as well as Track D and all of the retail that extends from Walgreens all the way north. So you're tying the residences from behind the park to all of these commercial endeavors for this north-south corridor. So, I mean, the benefits, just to show you something that was done in Northwest Arkansas in 2017 in a 1-year window, their trail and greenways were responsible for $137 million of benefits. That's $51 million in economic activity and $86 million in health benefits. When I say economic activity, that is hotels that benefit from it, restaurants, retail shops near it, and then the $86 million is healthier residents taking less days off from work, less medical claims. And so it's pretty obvious the benefit of a greenway, but what we're talking about here is a side path. So when you look at greenways, there's a lot of different options. Metro Plan made it pretty clear that they did not want the bottom images. They don't want signed routes. They don't want sharrows. And where we can avoid it, they don't want bike lanes. They want to have this greenway function for moms with a stroller, someone in a wheelchair, someone who might be walking their dog, as well as a bicyclist. So that doesn't work if you're looking at a sharrow or an on-road bike lane. So really, we were kind of picking from either the cycle track or the side path. And what the committee, the group that we were working with, the steering committee, said they'd really like to look at a side path, because the side path, and I'll show you some images of that, and you can see on the bottom images from the Razorback Greenway, but typically they're somewhere 12 to 14 feet wide, which you think about a drive lane on a road, that's 12 feet typically. But these are off the road, and in this case, if separated and accommodate multiple users. And so what we're looking at is something that looks a little bit like this. On the left, you can see that's an image of the Razorback Greenway. You've got the line down the middle. Sometimes those lines are dashed to represent the different direction of travel. On the right, I believe this is in Colorado. That one's probably a good 14. The one on the left is probably more like 10 or 12, but again, accommodates all users. And so when you think about Club Manor and you think about Maumelle, we really don't have a true Main Street. I mean, Club Manor tries to function as a Main Street with our parades and all the different functions that happen through the year, but with it being 4 lanes of vehicular travel and very narrow sidewalks, it doesn't present itself as a walkable Main Street. The image on the bottom left where the flowers are, some design work we did years ago over in Broken Arrow. That's not a greenway, but they closed 2 lanes to allow for a much wider sidewalk so the cafes could spill out onto it. The people with the retail shops could put their wares out. They've even added the planters and the decorative poles. And so what we're showing for this project, the potential is on the upper right, and I've got some other images to help you with. We're looking at a 60-foot right-of-way, removing 2 vehicular lanes. So instead of 4 lanes of vehicular travel, you'll have 2. Have that 10-foot median to keep you buffered from the cars, and then a 12-foot multi-use shared path. And so all that still fits within the existing 60-foot right-of-way. So you're not having to acquire any land from any private property. That's all within that current right-of-way. Here's a better image. Did a little 3D so you could sort of visualize it from the air. You can see the 2 travel lanes, that median with the decorative light poles, and then the 12-foot side path. And as I'll show you here in the plan, I know it's hard to read. I blew up on some other images, but you can see it. The proposed greenway coming through would extend from Odom all the way north to Millwood, and I'll show you in each section how that's accommodated. So here's a blow up of the first section on the south, and you can see Kroger there on your right. And so as you cross at a mid-block crossing from the south side of Odom, where the trail currently is, you'd cross to be behind Kroger, and this whole time the greenway would stay on the east side of the road, all the way north-south, all the way up the east side. And you can see those circles represents potential trees in that buffer island. You can see the 2 travel lanes are on the west side of the road. There's a sidewalk currently on that west side, on the far side, that's just a narrow 6-foot walk next to Lake Willistine Park. The thought here, let me back up, is that you have Track D. Track D at some point is going to get developed. I did want you to know that a representative from the owners of Track D, he was on our steering committee. So we were getting input from Track D and what they would like to see happen. And what's interesting about that is they understand the importance of having that greenway at their back door. It's really going to benefit them dramatically, but it'll benefit the city as well. So, I mean, what it would allow for is if there's any retail, like you see the image on the right, right next to, say, the property line or set back some, you'd have that access with the greenway. It could be a restaurant, it could be shops, you might have residences above it, or like the image on the bottom left, you might have residences that back up to it. But in most cases, it would be pretty smart on their part to do retail and capitalize on that foot traffic and that use. If you look at the next section, which is just moving further north, we've got Lake Willistine. Right now, there's a sidewalk project that's going to tie the walking path around the lake down to Club Manor. So we would have that pedestrian crossing right there as you come into Track D, or at least along the side of Track D. And what we would probably suggest there would be what we call a rapid flashing beacon. That's the image on the upper right and the bottom right, the RRFB. So what happens is it's a push button control. If a pedestrian wants to cross, they just push the button and that bar lights up and flashes. It alerts the motorist that someone's crossing. The one on the bottom right is over in Broken Arrow where they actually have bollards. You break the plane, of that, and it would automatically set it. You don't have to push any buttons. A little more higher dollar, but really this will alert the motorist to that. And then with that median in there, it gives you a little bit of a safety too, as far as getting across the road. The bottom left is a hawk signal, much more expensive, probably not warranted for the amount of traffic that's on Club Manor. So we really would recommend that crossing being the RFB. And then you can see here on the next slide on the right, you've got the middle section, the town center all the way up to Carnahan. We do have a couple road crossings, but those would occur at the stop signs. And we would then continue north. Oh, just want to give you an image of what that could look and feel like. I did a study tour down in Austin, Texas last fall. This isn't exactly what it would be, but it's very much like you've got a 2-lane road. You have the median there with the trees. In this case, this is a cycle track, but it's very similar to having a 12-foot wide side path, and then you have the decorative poles, and where that, on the right of the image, where that fence line is, might be those businesses, the back of the new car wash, or the back of, or the parking lot for Anchor. So you'd have businesses running along that property line. On the left, where those houses are, imagine Cheers or Dollar General on the other side of the street. And so then this last section, you'd come to the north. We would extend it all the way to Millwood, but there's an opportunity to actually come through city property to take it up to the lighted intersection at Millwood and the Boulevard. And we were asked pro bono just to work up a little sketch of what that property could look like. I want to show you it now. You're aware that the courts building is there, and there's some parking lot. The property's not in use currently. That heavily wooded area on the bottom, and I'll go back. You can kind of see it. We're showing a path going through there. So there's nothing currently in that piece of it. And this is what we thought could happen there. Make it like a gateway park, maybe for food truck court, maybe a farmer's market. Whatever it would be, intensive pedestrian and bicycle and community activity. And you can see how the trail would tie in at Club Manor, come through the wooded section and up to the corner where you could safely cross, and then continue north along the boulevard where the current trail is as it goes towards Lake Valencia. Again, none of this is set in stone. Just wanted to show you opportunities, whether it's the food truck court, which we're seeing lots of towns across the country, especially in Arkansas. We're hearing the requests for those, some outdoor, gathering places and farmers market. And just to leave you with this image again, in case there's any questions, just how it would look and feel.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I'll go ahead and open the floor if there's any questions, comments, or discussion. Councilmember Gardner?
Just to give Mr. Roberts an opportunity to speak some more. I enjoy hearing from him regarding this. What kind of time frame would something like this, we're talking about a mile, I believe?
It's just shy of a mile. It's
yeah.
like 0.9.
What kind of time frame would that take to have something in place? Of course, you have to go through the whole bid process and all that, but I'm just curious what we would be looking at.
Good question. It depends on your funding, of course. And I did want to mention that Metro Plan is going to be opening up TAP grants over the next few years to have cities apply for their version of a TAP. Of course, RDOT has their TAP grants as well. So you might get some relief on the funding applying for some of those. They're going to look at the trickier towns that have issues, but you can still apply. Maybe you'll get some funding there. It just depends on the funding. If you get the funding in place, you obviously you need to do survey work, and after that you're going to have some environmental clearance, not wetland, but environmental as in what happens within the right-of-way and NEPA type investigations. After that, you're going to do the engineering and then go to bid and construct. So that sort of survey to construction period, you're probably looking at 6 months to a year. It just depends, again, on a lot of factors.
Okay.
But I wouldn't suggest phasing this. If possible, I would try to do it when you can acquire the funds, mostly because you don't want to put someone on a facility, whether they're on a bike or they're walking, and have it just end. And so, really, the smart thing would be to just get all your ducks in a row, get this thing built so that when someone comes across Odom, they're going up that and everything develops to it, whether it's track D that's still unknown, or other changes that could occur. And then you can go to Millwood and we could deal with the crossing there if you don't do the Gateway Park at first. You could certainly phase that piece in. So timing is tricky. It's a tricky question.
And with MetroPlan doing what they're doing over the next 10 years, projects like this would be favorable in their eyes for some of these grants, possibly, to?
Yes, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that. As we're looking at, obviously, 4 counties, a lot of towns, a lot of tricky situations. Palarm Creek, getting around that corner north of Maumelle is going to be real tricky. So there are some areas that will probably rank high on their evaluation scoring, but that's not to say that you're not going to be eligible. There's still a good chance of getting something.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, do you have any kind of online links where we can go back and review these later?
I don't, but I'm happy to send this PowerPoint to you all, or whatever format you want. I did bring just print-offs of some of the images, not the whole PowerPoint, so I can do both digital or hard copy.
And we can get this posted on the city website.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
for asking. I want to go back, I'm sorry, Councilmember Tierney, was that all?
Yeah, that was my question.
I wanted to go back to one thing that Councilmember Gardner did. I think what we did with the roundabout for Country Club Parkway and White Oak Crossing that proved very effective in applying for the grant was we initiated and took care of the engineering and the studies up front. You all may recall we had the survey, that we sent out. We got a lot of feedback and then engineered the bulk of the roundabout before applying for the actual construction funds. That proved, I think, effective in the way the MetroPlan has been grading and ranking these projects. It checked a lot of boxes up front and allowed us to sort of get a head start on that. And so what I would recommend, and what I, contingent upon how the council feels, is come back to the city council at a subsequent meeting with money to begin the engineering process. And get that going, working, and then once we have those plans, or sort of as those plans are coming along, look at using that to sort of speed the grant process along, because they kind of break it out in some ways now between the difference between engineering projects and construction projects when awarding those grants. Was there any other discussion, questions, comments from Mr. Roberts while he's here?
I did want to add one thing, and that is, as a resident of this town and as a parent of a special needs child in a power wheelchair, we need to be looking at ways to become more walkable. Yes, I'm a cyclist. I love riding my bike, but it's really about ways that the community can access things that are non-vehicular, whether it's the park, which is an amazing park. Willisteen's one of my favorites, or it's going to be what will eventually happen at Track D. And so this is a perfect opportunity to slow traffic down, but yet provide alternate transportation options.
Councilmember Shin?
Would you care to elaborate on the traffic circle that I see in the diagram?
I was just asked to show that as a maybe.
Okay.
Our firm didn't draw that. We didn't price it. We weren't part of any of that.
Okay.
But I was asked just to go ahead and put that in just in case it happens, because traffic circles do affect, obviously, the speed and the way vehicles function in them versus a stoplight versus nothing there at all. And so we wanted to show where the crossing would be back from that. And I didn't mention this in that graphic, but we certainly would want to do something to protect that crossing for those pedestrians. It could be a hawk signal, like I had shown in that one slide on the bottom left. But it just depends on what happens at that intersection. Wish I could tell you more, it's just that,
I just saw it in
yeah,
the graphic.
I'm not
there, and
promoting it,
it's a
and
real
I'm not saying
hot
don't do
topic,
it.
So,
Yeah, it's in there just because it's a maybe.
okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, sir. One thing that I would mention, I know Councilmember Shin went on the tour to Northwest Arkansas. I'd heard about the Greenway. I'd never been on it. One of the things that really surprised me was how seamlessly it felt like the planned portions of it just fit into the community. And then I was shocked at the economic development that sprung up off of the Greenway. It was amazing. I mean, especially as you're going through the middle of cities, people were clamoring to have a business on the Greenway, and it was very walkable, very accessible. So I'm excited to see this take off and steer off another direction, and hopefully have a new Main Street in our town. But it was really exciting to see the potential that could come from something like this.
That's well said, and there's a great example, and that is if you do before and after shots of downtown Springdale. Springdale, I mean, was sort of a ghost town. Their downtown there's just nothing there. I rode my bike on the Greenway right after it was built from our office to Lake Fayetteville and back, and we planned to stop there for dinner, and there was one little taco stand. That was it. And this was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And because of what that Greenway does to their downtown, how it comes through, it has just grown exponentially. Restaurants, pubs, different options for food, drink, retail, and it's all centered on the Greenway. It's not near it and you have to walk 2 blocks to it. It's just right there. And what we're hearing from realtors in Northwest Arkansas is that every time that they post a listing, they'll actually show distance from the Greenway, whether it's an apartment or a house for sale. So it's become such a big deal as how close am I to that Greenway for a business or a resident. And so that's the main reason that MetroPlan moved to put aside half of their transportation funds for the next 10 years to try to catch up with what they're seeing is happening in Northwest Arkansas. Because they feel like Central Arkansas is now way behind. And it's not just Northwest, it's everywhere in the country is doing this. And so they wanted to be able to sort of infuse that economic development with something like this that made sense for your health and recreation.
Yeah. My wife reminded me tonight and wanted me to mention, is this going to make it easier to get to Sonic? And I told her, from what I'd seen, yes, it would. Club Manor almost acts like a barrier for pedestrians because people are afraid to jump across 4 lanes of traffic. Even though there's very few cars on it, it's still 4 lanes of traffic or of asphalt to get across. And so it would certainly improve connected. And a large portion of our population lives to the west of Club Manor.
Right.
And this would help connect all of those bike trails that we have already into our downtown. So
That's right. And just so you know, the Track D owner's representative not only was excited about these possibilities, but they made it sound like, or he made it sound like, the way they're going to develop Track D one day wouldn't create a wall or a barrier. So if you're coming from Willistine and those neighborhoods you're talking about, they made it sound like they'd love for there to be sort of a central connection from the park to Sonic and other businesses along the boulevard, almost like creating a sort of an open space between 2 developments, even though it's all within Track D. So hopefully that's the case. And like you said, crossing over and then getting through to the businesses would be great.
And a couple things. First, I just want to point out that the Gateway Park and the Club Manor corridor are 2 separate projects, or two things that either one could go forward without the other one. And we'll be talking about that later. Also, we've referenced the owners of Track D, but we've also there was a lot more owners and tenants in that area. However, the property that stands the most to change in the near future is obviously the property that doesn't have anything on it right now. So, all right, any additional discussion? Okay, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to the next item of new business, which is Resolution 2022-10, amending the budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-10, a resolution appropriating funds for an all-inclusive playground and for other purposes.
Thank you. All right, so this resolution, y'all I'm sure have taken a look at it. What we have is ARPA funds, some of the funds that the city has got for COVID purposes. One of the projects that we looked at pretty early on was playgrounds, or how we could enhance outdoor activities for youth that during the COVID pandemic were oftentimes sort of at home or didn't have the opportunities to go out and about. The obvious choice was the playground that has been in works for quite a while now, and that is the all-inclusive playground. The amount of funds, the amount of this project is, we're looking at upwards, it far surpasses the amount we have here. I want to say it was close to 600,000, I believe, at last estimate. What we've done, and the reason we came up with this amount of money, and that's $300,000 from the ARPA funds, is to allow the city to apply for a grant program that has up to $500,000 with a 50% max, right? Match. So that would be the city paying $250,000 of that, and applying for that grant. The grant, hopefully, we get awarded the grant and the whole thing, and then you got $500,000. And then there's the Maumelle Plain Splash Committee hopefully this serves to really get that project going with fundraising and to get this going. So while this is a big number, it doesn't pay half of what we think the playground would cost to install. So the screen, there we go. So I'd like to go ahead and open this up for discussion. Councilmember Mazzoni.
Yeah, the only question I have is just working with federal grants a lot in the past. They go from wide open, here it is, to the actual constraints, what you can spend it for, sometimes get very narrow. I just want to make sure that we've looked at all the actual requirements in the ARPA funds to make sure that this does meet scrutiny, so we don't get hit negatively later.
You're talking about with the ARPA funds?
Yes.
Yes. It looks like Ms. Mathis is wanting to say something.
I was just gonna.
If you could come up to the microphone, please.
I was just going to confirm that, yes, the Treasury did issue final rule, and this falls within they kind of changed some stuff on us right at the end and gave us an allowance that says if it's a general government purpose, you can spend these funds on it up to $10 million. We only got I don't remember how many million. So it falls within those purposes. We will have to follow all of the federal procurement guidelines, though, to make sure that we've got all of our T's crossed and I's dotted on any procurement that we do for this project.
Councilmember Gardner?
I know Director Rayburn's here. If you wanted to come up, I was just going to mention, he could explain the state tourism grant, I believe, is the one that we would be eligible for, and we'd looked at it in the past, but because we had not allocated any city funds, that's what had to be used to get the other match. So
correct. I mean, you said exactly the way it works. Maumelle's gotten this same grant. It's been years back when Steve Ebbetson was the director. I believe it was for the bathroom at Lake Willisteen and the amphitheater. And basically, it has to be in the current year budget, which this resolution would do that, because you have to have your half, the city has to have its money on hand and usable before they will accept the grant to match it, basically, 50% match. So, and we haven't gotten it in a while. I know this past year, Dave was telling me that a lot of Arkansas cities, have gotten the 50/50 matching grant from the state to, build these same type, all-inclusive playgrounds. So it's something Dave, do you remember how many? I think you told me, I forgot.
There were, I think, 30 awarded, but I would say well over half were inclusive playgrounds.
So it's quite a bit for this type of a playground.
What was the timeline? Is it July that we were looking at for the?
I think it has to be in July or August. I'd have to double check that, but.
And there's an entire process that is required, and it's one of the reasons we want to make sure that we have the money, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go down that process that spells out everything with public hearings and community involvement and feedback in that process. And sort of to get that kicked off is what we're looking at doing here. Yes, sir, Mr. Roberts?
I just wanted to shed some light on it since I've been helping communities write these grants, and I'm happy to help with Maumell's grant. Last year, I helped the city of Lowell up near Rogers do a grant for $500,000 ask, and they got the full 250 or 247 something. And luckily, because of COVID, they changed the rules, so you don't have to have public meetings, public hearings, as long as you advertise what you're going to do on social media, put it on social media for comments. If you just get screenshots of those comments, you put it in the packet, they call it good. It was a lot more difficult in the past where you had to have public meetings and sign-in sheets. And now you will still have to have the Parks Department representative come out to the site, and there's still things you have to check off. And the year before last, I helped Pulaski County get money for an inclusive playground. So right now they're trending, and I told Philip I'm happy to give him my submittal for Lowell last year as the go-by because it scored very high. So
Sounds like a plan.
And thank you, Mr. Roberts, for, I know this project is near and dear to you, but the amount of time and effort that you volunteered for this has been really appreciated, so thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing Councilmember Mazzoni?
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and second to approve Resolution 2022-10. Any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. We will move on to the next item of business, Resolution 2022-11, resolution or amending the street fund budget. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2022-11. A resolution to amend the 2022 street fund budget.
Thank you. This, what we're looking at doing is purchasing a new sand spreader and snow plow blade. These weren't expected to go down. I talked with Mr. Hogan, and we can wait and just ask for this in the budget process. The problem with the budget is it doesn't get adopted till January, so we're crossing our fingers that we don't need them sometime later this year. I think we would all rather be in the position of being prepared in the event of another snow and ice storm. So that's why I brought this to the council early mid-year. Councilmember Gardner?
Motion to approve Resolution 2022-11.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to mayor's comments, and I will spare y'all today. So council member comments? City attorney comments?
No comments.
City clerk comments?
No comments.
Quickly.
Sorry, sir. Just to bring you guys' attention to the tree board openings, there are 3.
And not only the tree board openings, but we were again received the Tree City USA recognition that is in the council packet. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed, no.